Gopi Janavallabha Girivaradari Gopi Janavallabha Yashoda Nandana Vrajjana Ranjana Yashoda Nandana Vrajjana Ranjana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Punjabi Hari Jaya Radha Punjabi Hari Jaya Radha Madhava Punjabi Hari Jaya Radha Punjabi Hari Gopi Janavallabha Girivaradari Gopi Janavallabha Gopi Janavallabha Girivaradari Gopi Janavallabha Yashoda Nandana Vrajjana Ranjana Yashoda Nandana Vrajjana Ranjana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Tira Vanachari Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Jaya Radha Madhava Radha Madhava Shri Radhe Jaya Radha Giridhari Radha Giridhari Shri Radhe Prabhupada 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 Jaya Jaya Prabhupada Jaya Jaya Prabhupada Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada John Vishnupad Paramahamsa Parivajikacharya Stotra Shata Shishimad A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Maharaj Srila Prabhupada Ki John Vishnupad Paramahamsa Parivajikacharya Stotra Shata Shishimad Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Goswami Maharaj Prabhupada Ki Grantarashim Bhaktam Ki Tagora Premanandi We'll start by reading from the Srila Prabhupada Lilamrita. The chapter is entitled "This Remote Corner of the World," page 1001. Prabhupada had given the TV interviewer the very thing he was after, controversy. But because it was not desirable controversy, the interviewer promptly dropped it. Instead, he asked Prabhupada how one could recognize a true follower of Krishna consciousness by his behavior. He'd be a perfect gentleman, Prabhupada said. That's all. Therefore, I prohibit my disciples to eat meat. Interviewer: to eat meat? Srila Prabhupada: yes, and therefore I prohibit illicit sex life. Therefore, I prohibit intoxication. They do not even smoke, what to speak of other intoxication. When Prabhupada said that whoever observed these 4 rules would become a perfect gentleman, the interviewer asked whether there was a place for women in the religion. Prabhupada replied that women and men had the same rights and followed the same principles. The interviewer asked whether Prabhupada was encouraged or discouraged, and Prabhupada said he was encouraged because so many devotees were joining. The interviewer doubted that many were joining, since out of 200 million Americans, only 24 devotees were present in the TV studio. When you sell diamonds, Prabhupada replied, you cannot expect that everyone will purchase. As a final question, the interviewer asked if Prabhupada had any major complaints about American society. Srila Prabhupada: I have no complaint. These boys and girls are very nice. I am rather encouraged that these boys and girls are hankering after something nice. They are frustrated. So now, since they have the best thing, they are coming. The interviewer asked Srila Prabhupada and his followers to chant Hare Krishna, and within half a minute they were off the air. The hot studio lights went out, and the engineers started talking among themselves. The interviewer bid Srila Prabhupada a polite farewell. He had no intention of continuing their talk, but Srila Prabhupada continued preaching. On camera or off camera made no difference to him. He saw the interviewer not merely as a television personality, but as someone to receive Krishna's mercy. The two had been sitting very closely for the interview, and Prabhupada now leaned toward the interviewer and said, let me ask you one question. If you have some disease and you want to cure this disease, what is the best way to go about it? By asking a friend, or by going to a medical doctor and asking how to cure this disease? Would you go to a friend? The man replied, yes. Prabhupada shook his head. You would go to a friend? Again, the man said yes. The interviewer was not concentrating, so Prabhupada patiently repeated his example. Try to understand, he said. If you have some disease, then would you go to a medical doctor or would you go to a friend? The man could not grasp the point, so Prabhupada answered, no, you would not go to a friend. You would go to a physician, one who knows the answer. That is the spiritual master. They talked a while longer, and finally Prabhupada and the devotees left. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Today we're reading from the Srimad Bhagavatam, 5th canto, 15th chapter, entitled The Glories of the Descendants of King Priyavrata, texts 9 and 10. And yeah, I'll just read the Sanskrit for text 9 myself and also text 10. This is text 9. Gayang darpah ka pratyati karmabhir yajva bhimani bahuvid dharma gopta samagata shri sadasaspati satang satsevakonyo bhagavat kalamrite. Translation: the great King Gaia used to perform all kinds of Vedic rituals. He was highly intelligent and expert in studying all the Vedic literatures. He maintained the religious principles and possessed all kinds of opulence. He was a leader among gentlemen and a servant of the devotees. He was a totally qualified plenary expansion of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Therefore, who could equal him in the performance of gigantic ritualistic ceremonies? Text 10. I'll just say this by myself as well. Yam abhyashinchan paraya mudasati satya shisho daksha kanya sarid bihi yasya prajanang dududhe dara shisho nira shisho guna vatsa snutodaha. Yam abhyashinchan paraya mudasati satya shisho daksha kanya sarid bihi. Yasya prajanang tuduhe dada shisho nira shisho guna vatsa snutodhaha. Yam abhyashin chan paraya muda sati satya shisho daksha kanya sarat bihi. Yasya prajanang dududhe dara shisho nira shisho guna vatsa snutodhaha. Synonyms. Yam, whom. Abhyashinchan, bathed. Paraya, with great. Muda, satisfaction. Sati, all chaste and devoted to their husbands. Satya, true. Ashisha, whose blessings. Daksha Kanya, the daughters of King Daksha. Saridpihi, with sanctified water. Yasya, whose. Prajanam, of the citizens. Durudhe, fulfilled. Tara, the planet Earth. Ashisha, of all desires. Nirashisha, although personally having no desire. Gunavatsa snuta udha, Earth becoming like a cow whose udders flowed upon seeing Gaia's qualities and ruling over the citizens. Translation in Prabhupada's Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Maharaj, Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Translation. All the chaste and honest daughters of Maharaj Daksha, such as Shraddha, Maitri, and Daya, whose blessings were always effective, bathed Maharaj Gaya with sanctified water. Indeed, they were very satisfied with Maharaj Gaya. The planet Earth personified came as a cow, and as though she saw her calf, she delivered milk profusely when she saw all the good qualities of Maharaj Gaya. In other words, Maharaj Gaya was able to derive all benefits from the earth and thus satisfy the desires of his citizens. However, he personally had no desire. Purport. The earth over which Maharaj Gaya ruled is compared to a cow. The good qualities whereby he maintained and ruled the citizens are compared to the calf. A cow delivers milk in the presence of her calf. Similarly, the cow or earth fulfilled the desires of Maharaj Gaya, who was able to utilize all the resources of the earth to benefit his citizens. This was possible because he was bathed in sanctified water by the honest daughters of Daksha. Unless a king or ruler is blessed by authorities, he cannot rule the citizens very satisfactorily. Through the good qualities of the ruler, the citizens became very happy and well qualified. Ong Agyanatimirandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshuramiritanyena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shiva Sari Kauda Bhaktavrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. This particular section of the Bhagavatam, we're hearing about one of the many ideal leaders who existed in ancient history. Primarily, we're focusing here on Maharaj Gaya. Unlike the leaders today, these kings, otherwise known as Raja Rishis, were endowed with all good qualities. Yes, we acknowledge that Maharaj Gaya was also an incarnation of the Supreme Lord. But like many incarnations, they still act to teach us by their example. As it said in the Bhagavad Gita, Yad Yad Acharati Shreshtas Tatad Evet Taro Janaha Sayat Pramanam Kurute Lokas Tad Anuvartate. Whatever action a great man performs, common men follow, and whatever standards he sets by his exemplary acts, all the world pursues. The king is meant to be the representative of the Supreme Lord. And you can imagine that's a very heavy responsibility. In a purport in the first canto, Prabhupada explains that the king is said to be the representative of the absolute personality of Godhead because he is trained to acquire the qualities of God to protect the living beings. An ideal king, thoroughly trained by culture and devotional service with the martial spirit, makes a perfect king. Such a personal monarchy is far better than the so-called democracy of no training and responsibility. It's quite a powerful statement. So in the modern day, even though we haven't seen it for a long time, many people in their heart of hearts, they long for a trustworthy leader, someone who they can respect, someone who they know will care for them, and look after at least the bare necessities of life for them. But what do we see today? What we see today, rather, is a disgrace, to put it bluntly. I was thinking about it. Even if we don't really feel like whoever's in the position of prime minister for the country that we live in makes much of a difference to our lives, actually it does, without us knowing. Often some people say, I don't vote because it doesn't matter who gets in, it's all the same. Which is true in one sense. Someone may say you're choosing between this animal or another to be elected as the prime minister. But if we think about it deeply, it does affect our life. Regardless of who's elected, if they're not an ideal leader, it does affect our life in quite a deep way. So therefore, I was thinking about it. Has anyone here potentially felt like, in the course of their life, before they were a devotee, or even now, uncertainty about their living situation, unsure whether you'll be able to keep your job and survive in this crazy economy that we live in? Have you ever been unsure whether you'll make ends meet? Have you ever been uncertain about your direction in life? Like, what job am I supposed to do? What's my purpose? Is there anything out there that I can do that I'll actually enjoy, that's in accordance with my nature? Are there even any employment opportunities at all? And it may not apply to many of you here, being from India, but for some of us at least, if we've ever committed sinful activity without any immediate consequences, breaking the 4 regs, for example, without any immediate consequences, then it's safe to say that there's a problem with the leadership. Because a proper leader should take care of all these things. They should make it so that the people under their rule are completely secure in their living situation. They should make it so everybody has all the necessities of life met for them. They should be instituting Varnashram Dharma, which means that they should know what their nature is, that people should know how to work, where to work. There should be no uncertainty or confusion as to what to do in life. And of course, at the very least, there shouldn't be any scope for performing sinful activity. Therefore, there's a problem at the top, and it's filtering its way down. Prabhupada explains in another purport in the 5th canto that as soon as a demon rules the earth, everything becomes chaotic. At the present moment, the world is inclined toward the democratic process, but the people in general are all contaminated by the modes of passion and ignorance. Consequently, they cannot select the right person to head the government. The president is selected by the votes of ignorant Shudras. Therefore, another Shudra is elected, and immediately the entire government becomes polluted. If people strictly follow the principles of Bhagavad Gita, however, they would elect a person who is the Lord's devotee, then automatically there would be good government. So all around the world, at different times, different places, there's been a point in history where the people have fought for democracy, fought for the right to vote for their leader instead of being ruled by a dictator or some other incompetent person. But the interesting point here that Prabhupada makes is that if the people themselves aren't in proper consciousness, if they're in the modes of passion and ignorance, then how can they expect to elect a proper leader? In fact, they'll only elect a leader who is in the same consciousness as themselves, someone who's also in passion and ignorance. So therefore, the whole point of democracies, it kind of goes out the window because you lose. Doesn't matter who you vote for, if you yourself don't know what's right and wrong, then how could you ever hope to get someone in power who knows what's right and wrong for you? So there's a stark contrast when we look at today as compared to what we read about in the Bhagavatam. I was reading through this whole section and looking at all the qualities of Maharaj Gaya, and the more I read it, the more I was impressed. I was impressed that there could be such a leader in existence. I was impressed that there could be such a human in existence at a certain point in time who ruled over the empire in such an effective and compassionate way. So if we do a little bit of a comparison, go deeper into this comparison between then and now. First of all, if we go back a bit within the section, Maharaj Gaya, he took great care to look after the needs of the citizens. It was said he ensured that the citizens felt secure by protecting their property. He ensured that the citizens had sufficient food. He pleased the citizens with gifts. I mean, where would you hear about this in the modern day? Like, which leader would go out of the way to give their citizens gifts? Even just to expect sufficient food, a secure living situation, as I said before, that's a bit of an ask. And as far as the leader goes, we don't know them from a bar of soap. They don't know us from a bar of soap. He met with his citizens and spoke sweetly to them. He gave his citizens good instruction about how to become first-class citizens. In other words, he taught them in the precepts of the Srimad Bhagavatam, Bhagavad Dharma. From this, I was understanding that the role of a leader is one of deep responsibility. It's a life dedicated to serving the well-being of your citizens on all levels, not just the physical, not just the psychological and emotional, but also the spiritual. A leader shouldn't simply be trying to help their citizens achieve sense gratification. Whereas that's what leaders promise today for their citizens. In fact, they're not even competent enough to do that. It's said in the 12th canto of the Bhagavatam, in the predictions for Kali Yuga, of which we're very much in the midst of, Dasu Praishu Rajesu. The kings in this age will be mostly thieves. Evang Praja Bhir Dushta Bhir Akirne Kshiti Mandale Pramavit Kshatra Shudranang Yobali Pavita Narapaha. And in time, as the earth thus becomes crowded with a corrupt population, whoever among any of the social classes shows himself to be the strongest will gain political power. We see this in some countries. Some countries are run by dictators. And one may say it's only a matter of time before we see that sort of thing happening in New Zealand. Prajahi lubdai rajanyair negrinai dashu dharma bihi. Achina dara dravena yasyanti girikananam. Losing their wives and properties to such avaricious and merciless rulers who will behave no better than ordinary thieves, the citizens will flee to the mountains and forests. Shakamuli mishak shaudra palapushpashti bojanaha. Anavrishya vinakshanti durviksha karapiditaha. Harassed by famine and excessive taxes, people will resort to eating leaves, roots, flesh, wild honey, fruits, flowers, and seeds. Struck by drought, they will become completely ruined. This sort of thing is already happening in some parts of the world. And it's beginning to make more sense. We see how the economy is going, and we see how hard it is to live, and how people have to pay exuberant amounts for their taxes. We can imagine how people just want to run away from the cities, the very places where they come to work, to make money, to live a better life, or a not so basic life as compared to those out in the country, will become the place of their suffering, a place where they lose everything and lose the will to even try at all. You can see how people would be more inclined to just leave the cities and live again in the forests, live off the land. Understanding this, yeah, has some pretty big implications for us as devotees as well. Because if not for the devotees, not for ISKCON, where will we ever hope to see such leaders again who actually care for the well-being of the citizens? I wasn't going to go on this tangent just yet, but I'll do it anyway. I was thinking about it. Prabhupada has said in the past that one of the missions of ISKCON is to create qualified brahmanas. Why is this necessary? Because if we look at the social body, the social structure of society as a body, then you have different limbs. The legs, which we know represent the Shudra class. You also have the stomach. It's not a limb, but it's part of the body, represented by the Vaishyas. You have the arms represented by the Kshatriyas, and then you have the head, which represented by the Brahmins. Without arms, society can somewhat go on. Life can still go on for the body. Maybe not very effectively, but still it can manage. Without a stomach, obviously that's pretty inconvenient. The body wouldn't function very well, but some people survive, not being able to eat at all. Without legs, people can still survive. But without a head, the body is completely useless, even if all the other limbs are there, all the other parts are there. In order to re-establish a proper human civilization, therefore, in order to re-establish Varnashram, we need educated Brahmins who understand how to apply the philosophy of what we read in the Bhagavad Gita, the philosophy of the Bhagavatam, in the modern day situation according to time, place, and circumstance. And not only that, the Brahmins will be the ones who are in charge of training the other Varnas to act according to their proper roles in society. Therefore, as devotees, if we want to see a change in society, therefore we have to focus on changing ourselves. We actually have to take the philosophy of Krishna consciousness very seriously. Try to become educated, try to become akin to the Brahmanas, who were educated in Vedic knowledge, who understood how to benefit society with Vedic knowledge, with spiritual knowledge, and then actually do so. However that looks in the future, practically speaking, I don't know. But in general, this is the direction that the society has to move in if we want to see a real change in the world. jumping off that tangent, again, more about Maharaj Guy's qualities. Very important, it was said before the particular verse that we're on. He was a devotee. As a bhakta, King Guy showed respect towards other devotees as well as his own devotional practices, and this made him an exemplar in devotion. Because he was an exemplary Vaishnava, he lived in spiritual consciousness, joyful and free from material influences. His transcendental activities kept him free from the bodily conception of life, and he was filled with complete realization of Brahman and therefore always jubilant. He did not experience material lamentation. Prabhupada, he goes on to explain in another purport, because he was a devotee of the Lord, he knew perfectly well how to conduct his administration for everybody's happiness, men, animals, plants, and all living creatures. A devotee understands that we're all servants of Krishna. Ultimately, we're all spiritual beings having a human experience. We've taken on different bodies according to our karma in this lifetime. Some are in the human form of life, some are male, some are female, some are animals, some are plants. A Vaishnava, seeing the true equality in all beings, is able to benefit all beings equally. Again, not just physically, not just emotionally, psychologically, but also spiritually. Lead the people, lead society so that all living beings can eventually achieve spiritual emancipation. Now, this is quite an important one, but obviously we can't expect that of any leaders today. Actually, if you look around the world today, and I hope I'm not, I hope none of this reaches any of the governments. I hope they're not like secretly recording this when I say these things. But Maharaj Gaya, it was stated, he was free from pride, attachment, and greed. Most governments are corrupt these days. Most governments and the leaders, they are actually in their position and trying to achieve their own ends while at the same time running a country so that they can keep their position. But without Krishna consciousness, the person in charge is, again, completely under the modes of passion and ignorance. And when under these modes, qualities like pride, attachment, and greed, they automatically manifest in the person. It was said, therefore, that Maharaj Gaya, he was neither proud nor materially attached as he ruled his vast kingdom. Although he is perfect in all respects, he remained humble. He ruled his kingdom in service to Lord Vishnu and was not anxious for political or military power. If someone is governed by pride, if someone is governed by attachment, if someone is governed by greed, then naturally they want to expand their empire. And what do you need to do that? Well, you need to increase your political or military power. As my spiritual master often brings up, many of the governments around the world are spending extremely high amounts of money on trying to develop more advanced nuclear weaponry. I was looking it up. In 2024, the USA spent about $56.8 billion on developing their nuclear arsenal, followed by China, which was actually quite far behind, 12.5 billion. Then France, 6.9 billion. India, interesting enough, 2.6 billion. And so many other countries as well. I was thinking about it. In one sense, it's a waste of time. It's a extreme waste of money, especially knowing that so many people are in want of just the bare necessities of life around the world. It's actually a waste of money, but for someone in a certain type of consciousness, then it makes complete sense. In order to protect what's yours, of which you're completely attached to, you need to spend money on the proper defense measures. And what is the most intimidating form of defense measure? nuclear weapons. Onto the verses that we read today, verses 9 and 10. I'll skim over a few points that I picked up when I was reading these verses. It was said that Maharaj Gai, he performed unequal and gigantic Veda rituals. How is this valuable? How is this relevant? Well, we exist on a planet, in a universe, actually, which is governed by higher beings than ourselves. Someone who's in knowledge understands, therefore, that in order to gain what I need to live a prosperous life, I need to please these higher beings. These higher beings we know as being the devas, but of course, Prabhupada never encouraged demigod worship in of itself. He brought us to the understanding in the Bhagavad Gita that the demigods are just parts of the Supreme, parts of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. That ultimately any yajna that is performed, while it may be directed at a demigod, actually ultimately Krishna himself is, as it said, Bhaktaram Yajna Tapasam. He's the ultimate beneficiary of all Vedic sacrifices. But at least it's good to understand what Krishna explains in the Gita. Devan bhavayatanena de deva bhaviyantu vaha parasparang bhavayanta shreya param avapsyata. That if you please the demigods by sacrifices, they'll also please you. And by nourishing one another, then there'll reign prosperity for all living beings. So as a responsible king, King Gaia, he performed Vedic sacrifices. He acknowledged the system of Deva worship. He acknowledged the fact that you need to please these higher beings in order to prosper in this world, the system being created by the Supreme Personality of Godhead himself. Another quality, he was also highly intelligent and expert in studying all the Vedic literature. How can a person lead properly? How can a person truly benefit someone if they don't understand the Shastra? In fact, when we think of helping people, often what we think of first of all, and this is not to be downplayed, this is also important, we think of feeding them, feeding the poor children in third world countries, providing them shelter. We think of helping people psychologically, mental health is such a big thing. We need to donate or even work in the mental health industry to try and help people overcome their struggles. All of this is important. All of this is necessary. And in fact, it's acknowledged that you need to have a certain degree of material stability in your life before you can actually really focus on your spiritual practice. But ultimately, just focus on those two things, to focus just helping people in those two levels. As it said, it's like trying to save the dress of a drowning man. Everybody's bound for death, ultimately. You may create the most impeccable, perfect material situation for them. You may save them from famine. You may then somehow magically cure their mental illness to the point where they can live a fully functional, happy, quote unquote, life in the material world, in a world where there's no happiness. But then ultimately, if they die only to take birth again, what did you really do for them? So therefore, how can one lead if they don't understand the Shastra? If they don't understand that we're more than the body and that we're ultimately spirit, soul, part and parcel of Krishna? Many other points, but because of time, I'll finish on something that I thought was interesting. It was explained here that being satisfied with King Gaia, the chaste and honest daughters of Maharaj Daksha blessed Maharaj Gaia. It was explained in the purport that because Maharaj Gaia pleased his authorities, he received their blessings. And Prabhupada goes on to explain that without receiving the blessings of your authorities in general, there's no possibility of being able to lead properly. What to speak of a leader like King Gaia, who's an incarnation, if he's putting himself in the position where he's trying to gain the blessings of his superiors, what does that say for us? Therefore, it's in our best interests as devotees to try and seek the blessings when it comes to dealing with our superiors. And I was recently talking about it in this ashram with my fellow Prabhus. How do we get the blessings of the senior devotees, especially because we've got the marathon coming up? We can use all the help we can get. And so how do we get the blessings? So one of the ideas that came up is that the way you get the blessings is that you have to do something to endear the authority, the senior, to you. The blessings come when the superior sees the good qualities of the junior. Just like planet Earth, when she saw the good qualities of Maharaj Gaia, she gave him all means for a prosperous life and a prosperous kingdom. Similarly, when the superior sees the good qualities of the junior, then they're happy to impart their blessings. We see this in the Mahabharata, where just before the Battle of Kurukshetra, Arjuna, Arjuna and Yudhishthir and the Pandavas, they all went to the leading generals on the side of the Kurus in order to beg their blessings to kill them. They went to Bhishma as such, they went to Dronacharya as such, and they approached them. You think it's quite hard to comprehend. You're trying to beg for the blessings to kill the person that you're getting the blessings from. But because Bhishma and Dronacharya, they recognized the good qualities of Maharaj Yudhishthira and the Pandavas, they happily gave their blessings to be killed. In fact, they said, if you hadn't have done this, if you hadn't have put yourself in this position of asking for such blessings, we would have both killed you very quickly. So we could see the extent that good qualities can actually have an effect on endearing the superiors to us. And ultimately, it's the superior that we're all trying to please is the spiritual master. Therefore, it's said, Yasya prasada bhagavat prasado yasya prasada nagatiko topi. Without the blessings of the guru, we cannot attain the ultimate. We cannot attain Krishna's mercy, which is the only thing that we really need in life. And the same, of course, it applies to all devotees. Even from the lowest devotee, you can try and seek their blessings. It doesn't hurt. It definitely humbles a person. So on that note, I better practice what I preach. And for those present, I hope, being my superiors, that you'd be willing to bless this ashram, to bless me, to bless us all, and participate in a marathon which is pleasing to Srila Prabhupada, pleasing to the Guru Parampara and our spiritual master, and to help many people who are in need in this society which is run by incompetent leaders. So hopefully, we'd be happy to receive such blessings. We need all the help we can get. And I'll conclude this class by saying what I spoke about. So in this section, we learnt about the qualities of an ideal leader. And something to add is that we can look at the qualities of Maharaj Gaia, and if we ever find ourselves in leadership positions, we can try to consider how we can apply these lessons that he teaches, this example that he gives in our own lives. And secondly, although we could speak more, only kept it short, how in order to be a leader at all, we need the blessings of our authorities. And blessings are gained by displaying endearing qualities and acting to please them. On that note, I'll finish there and ask if anybody has any comments or questions. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu. Dandot Pranam.
Another pranams.
Thank you very much. Right from 8 to 10, which you represented and made us understand how the good qualities of a leader really influence the mass of the kingdom and how they are influenced by the examples of King Gaya, who is none other than a true representative of the Lord. And we can see from text 8 the qualities of a good leader, which really are the points which is first of all, you should look after the portion of part of the people. You should be engaged in prinana, upalalana, and last is anushasana. Those four pillars are very, very important for a good leader, a good king, so that the kingdom remains in good quality. As you mentioned, how today's life or today's kingdom is so much in chaotic condition because they don't balance these four things. They are always do the things in one-sided, and that brings the whole chaotic condition in the world. And we can see from the examples as you have given with the references from the money they spend for the nuclear arsenal, the 56, 12.6, 6.9, and 26, what 2.6, what this represents. They are always in the mode of passion and ignorance. They never thought of the good quality, which is goodness. And this is how the world is rolling under the chaotic condition. So if we don't follow the principles of Shastra, this is going to happen. And that's why a good leader need to follow the Shastra very carefully. Not only that, he should be a good acharya. That means whatever he says, he must follow. And if he follows, as Bhagavad Gita 3:21 says, leader or the citizens or the people in general follow the leaders because the way the leader shows the way, people follow that. So those are the points that very, very important to understand in our life. And if we follow that, then the blessings automatically come. Because there is no interaction between the king and the citizens in a right perspective through Shastra. All this chaotic condition will be there. So it is very, very important for a leader to follow the Shastra and the way the citizens will follow him. Otherwise, there will all be a turbulent condition all over the world. What do you see today? Thank you so much for explaining this, how important the role of a leader like King Gaya. Because during his time, we can see even Prithu Maharaj and Yudhishthir Maharaj, the nature of the worldly condition was so systematic. Everything was in place and everybody was happy. Because if the stomach is not full and your mind is not satisfied with the surroundings, things will go wrong automatically. That's why these four things, Oshana and Poshana, Palana, Upalalana, and this Anushasana is very, very important. That actually systematically bind the kingdom and the people of the kingdom in a systematic way, and peace automatically prevails. Thank you so much. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, thank you for elaborating very nicely.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu. Dandot Pranam.
Dandot Pranams, Hare Krishna.
Thank you so much for a wonderful class, especially elucidating the qualities of good leaders. And yeah, so I was just thinking the present world with this one thing, of course, Krishna consciousness is very far away, and the next thing is there's so much of diversity, so much of diverse thought. So even if a leader wants to implement some tenets of Krishna consciousness, but he has to carry everybody with him. He has to carry the lowest common denominator, sort of like carry all the different diverse thoughts with them. So how can you balance like faithfulness to Krishna consciousness and carrying everybody with them? Yeah, just wanted your thoughts on that here. Because there's so much of diversity, diverse thoughts, diverse opinions here.
Yeah. Practically speaking, it would be very difficult. If not everybody is willing to take to Krishna conscious principles or even just Vedic principles, it'll be very, very difficult. But essentially, where the society looks like it did back in King Gaia's time, or whether it looks like it does now, whoever is put into that leadership position, and I would say it'd be very nice if someone who was a devotee was put into a leadership position, they have to always take advice from the next level up, the Brahmanas or the Brahmin Vaishnavas. So in all circumstances, the leader, as we know in Vedic society, is always confiding in the Brahmanas who direct the leader in how to engage with society, whatever society looks like, whoever's there, how to deal with all the various problems that come up in society. So the leader should defer to a Brahmana who understands, spiritual knowledge, but also how to apply it according to the time, place, and circumstance. I imagine, and who am I to say in one sense, but I just imagine if it was ever the case that a devotee became a leader, in modern society, then they'd have to have quite a big team of Brahmanas and other, like a support team to help them, to guide them, to support them in being able to manage whatever role they're in. It would be pretty difficult, though. It'd be pretty hard. But one thing that we noticed is that if the person actually displays the qualities of the leaders of the standard of the Bhagavatam, or even just like Srila Prabhupada, we see through those qualities, the people, and seeing how genuine the person is, caring, all that sort of thing, then naturally they want to fall in line. They want to serve the person. Even in our own lives, when we showed other people that we actually care for their well-being, people, they're ready to serve us till no end. Not that we should be looking for service, we serve each other, but when you care about the well-being of others truly, then people naturally, they're endeared to you. But practically speaking, it'll be very complex, but those are just some broad ideas that I have. Does that make sense at all?
Thank you, Prabhu. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, Hare Krishna. Was there anything else, or?
Well, Krishna, thank you very much for the nice class. And it appears there is no other person to make any comments. So the class may be concluded. Thank you once again for your very nice class. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, thank you very much.
पतितानं पावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो नमो नमः अनंत कोटि वैष्णव वृंद की जय प्रभुपाद की जय श्री मनोभिराम प्रभु की जय गौर प्रेमानंदे हरि हरि बोल ऑल ग्लोरीज assembled devotees Hare Krishna. Thank you Prabhu.
All the
Very
best,
nice
all the
class.
best
Hare
for the
Krishna.
marathon.
Thank you, Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna.